November 14th, 2023. In the staggering lightless expanse beyond the reach of our sun, a solitary sentinel faltered. 24 billion kilometers from the pale blue dot that conceived it, Voyager 1 began to stutter. For 46 years, this fragile arrangement of aluminum and plutonium had served as the eyes and ears of a species confined to a single world. It had traversed the giant gas planets, witnessed the volcanic agony of distant moons, and crossed the invisible boundary into the interstellar void. But on this specific Tuesday in late autumn, the voice that had spoken with unwavering clarity since 1977 dissolved into a haunting, repetitive binary pulse. It was no longer sending the secrets of the abyss back to its creators. It was repeating a single, meaningless cycle of zeros and ones, a digital heartbeat echoing in a cathedral of infinite silence. To understand the tragedy of this moment, one must contemplate the sheer scale of the isolation. Voyager. 1 is the furthest human-made object in existence. It drifts in the heliopause, a realm where the solar wind gives way to the pressure of the galaxy itself. Here, the sun is merely a bright star, devoid of warmth or comfort. The probe is surrounded by an environment of such profound emptiness that the term vacuum fails to capture its hostility. It is a place of primordial cold where the very concept of direction loses its meaning. For decades, the probe had transmitted a stream of data, a coherent symphony of telemetry that told us of cosmic rays and magnetic fields. But now, that symphony had been replaced by a monotone drone. The Sentinel had become delirious. The engineers at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory observed the incoming signal with a sense of quiet dread. Because of the inexorable laws of physics, a command sent from Earth takes over 22 hours to reach the spacecraft, travelling at the ultimate speed of light. The reply, if it comes at all, requires another 22 hours to return. Every conversation with this distant wanderer is a 44-hour vigil. When the data stream broke, it was as if a long-distance caller had suddenly lost their mind mid-sentence, repeating the same word over and over across a connection that spanned the solar system. This was not a simple mechanical failure. This was the decay of a memory. Inside the heart of the probe lies the flight data system, a computer architecture designed in an era when memory was measured in kilobytes rather than gigabytes. To visualize the complexity of the repair, imagine a vast, ancient library where every book is handwritten and the only librarian is 24 billion kilometers away. The librarian cannot see the shelves. They must send a letter, wait 2 days for a response, and try to deduce which single page and which single book has been torn or smudged, based on the garbled shouts echoing through the halls. The problem was eventually traced to a single chip, a tiny remnant of 1970s technology that had finally succumbed to the relentless bombardment of high-energy particles, or the simple, cruel passage of eons. One portion of the memory had been corrupted, causing the entire system to trap itself in a loop, unable to access the instructions required to package and send its discoveries. This failure serves as a poignant metaphor for the human condition and our relationship with the cosmos. We are a species of builders, throwing our thoughts and our machines into the oblivion of space, hoping to leave a mark that will outlast our biological existence. Voyager. 1 carries the golden record, a copper disc plated in gold, containing the sounds of rain, the laughter of children, and the music of Bach and Mozart. It is a message in a bottle cast into a cosmic ocean that may never find a shore. When the probe began to stutter, it felt as though our most distant witness was finally being reclaimed by the entropy that governs all things. The void is not merely empty space, it is an active force of erosion. It wears down the strongest alloys and unravels the most sophisticated logic. It is the silent, eternal tide that eventually washes away every footprint. The struggle to revive Voyager 1 was not merely a feat of engineering, it was an act of defiance against the inevitable. For months, the team on Earth worked with the ghosts of the past, consulting manuals written by men and women who had long since retired, or passed into the great silence themselves. They had to think in the language of a dead epoch, manipulating a machine that possessed less computing power than a modern car key. They were attempting to perform surgery on a patient they could not touch, could not see, and could not hear in real time. It was a testament to human ingenuity, a refusal to let the light of our furthest candle be extinguished without a fight. Eventually, through a series of brilliant maneuvers, the engineers commanded the spacecraft to move its corrupted code to a different section of its functional memory. On a day months after the initial stutter began, the repetitive pulse ceased. In its place, a coherent signal returned. The sentinel was awake. It began once more to tell us about the interstellar medium, about the density of the plasma and the direction of the magnetic fields beyond the sun's influence. The heartbeat had steadied. The traveller had found its voice again. Yet, this victory is fleeting. The laws of thermodynamics are absolute and unforgiving. The radioisotope thermoelectric generators that power the probe are fueled by the decay of plutonium-238. With every passing second that fuel is spent, the heat fades and the power output drops. Within a few short years, the instruments will be turned off one by one to preserve the final dregs of energy. First the cameras, then the heaters, and finally the transmitter itself. By the end of this decade, or perhaps shortly into the next, Voyager 1 will go silent forever. It will continue its journey, an inert hunk of metal and glass, drifting through the abyss at 61,000 kilometers per hour. It will not reach another star for 40,000 years, and even then, it will pass through the outskirts of a constellation we will never visit. It will become a fossil of the 20th century, a silent monument to the moment a young, ambitious species first dared to reach beyond its cradle. Long after the cities that built it have crumbled into dust, long after the languages spoken by its creators have been forgotten, Voyager 1 will remain. It will be a ghost ship in the dark, carrying the music of a vanished world and the heartbeat of a species that once looked at the stars and refused to be afraid of the silence. The stuttering pulse of November 2023 was a warning. It was a reminder that we are living in a brief, exceptional epoch where the universe is still intelligible, where our machines can still reach into the void and send back news of the infinite. We are the witnesses of a cosmic symphony that has been playing for 13,800,000,000 years, and for a few short decades we have managed to record a few notes of the score. The lonely probe is our proxy, a sentinel at the edge of the abyss, holding back the darkness for just a little longer. When it finally falls silent, the universe will not notice. Not. The stars will continue to burn, the galaxies will continue to drift, and the void will remain as indifferent as it has always been. But for us, the silence will be profound. We will have lost our furthest point of contact, our most distant proof that we were here, and that we tried to understand the vast, inexorable mechanism of the cosmos. In the end, everything returns to the abyss. Every empire, every star, and every lonely probe is eventually devoured by the same shadows. But in the stuttering heartbeat of a dying machine, we find the ultimate expression of the human spirit, the courage to speak into the darkness, even when we know that no one may ever answer. To understand the eventual silence of this distant sentinel, we must first return to the moment of its violent, thunderous birth. We must draw back the veil of decades and look upon a humid morning on the coast of Florida. The date is September the 5th, 1977. On a launch pad at Cape Canaveral, a Titan Centaur rocket stands as a monument to human ambition, its silver skin shimmering under the morning sun. Inside its protective fairing lies a machine of delicate glass and rigid aluminum, a ghost in waiting, ready to be exhaled into the void. The countdown reaches its final cadence, and with a sudden primordial roar, the engines ignite. A torrent of chemical fire erupts, clawing at the earth, fighting the inexorable pull of gravity. In those first few seconds, the probe is not a traveller but a prisoner of physics, subjected to forces that would crush a human frame. But as the rocket pierces the clouds and the blue sky begins to deepen into the bruised purple of the upper atmosphere, the weight of the world begins to lift. The first stage falls away, a spent husk tumbling back toward the ocean, and then the second. Finally, the protective shell shatters and falls, revealing the aluminum ghost to the sun. Voyager 1 is born into the vacuum. It is a moment of profound, irreversible separation. Think of a child stepping off the porch of its family home for the very last time, carrying a diary that it can never show to the people it leaves behind. The probe does not look back. It cannot. Its sensors are already fixed on the distant cold coordinates of the outer solar system. It is moving at speeds that defy terrestrial comprehension, escaping the cradle of the inner planets and heading toward the dark, frigid realms where the sun is little more than a bright, indifferent spark. Bolted to the side of this machine is its most poetic burden, a gold-plated copper disc 12 inches in diameter, known as the Golden Record. It is a cargo of ghosts. It carries the sounds of a world that was already changing the moment the record was sealed. It contains the laughter of children who are now elderly, the songs of birds whose habitats have long since been paved over, and the greetings of world leaders who have been dust for decades. It is a time capsule of an entire biosphere, a symphony of a species that, even then, was beginning to realize its own fragility. The record is not truly for us, nor is it likely for an alien intelligence. It is a message sent into a bottle that may drift for 1 billion years, a testament to the fact that we once existed in the brief flickering light of this specific epoch. As the probe clears the orbit of the moon and pushes further into the abyss, the warmth of the Earth begins to fade. The familiar comforts of home, the cycle of day and night, the breath of the wind, the gentle pull of the tides, are replaced by the absolute crystalline silence of the cosmos. The machine does not feel the cold, but its sensors record it. It is moving through a realm of mechanical determination. Every thrust to fire, every adjustment of its high-gain antenna is governed by the cold logic of celestial mechanics. It is a sentinel of glass and metal, following a trajectory calculated to the millimetre, hurtling toward a rendezvous with giants. The departure is a slow unravelling of the ties that bind us to the universe. In those early days of the mission, the signal was strong, a vibrant, clear voice calling back to its creators. But with every passing hour, the distance grew by tens of thousands of kilometres. The delay in communication began to stretch, from seconds to minutes, and eventually to hours. The umbilical cord of radio waves was being pulled thin, stretching across the vast empty reaches between the worlds. Voyager 1 was leaving the neighbourhood of the rocky planets, the small, sun-drenched marbles where life could cling to the surface. It was entering the territory of the Leviathans, Jupiter and Saturn, worlds of crushing pressure and eternal storms. But even these giants were merely milestones on a journey into the true dark. The probe was designed to be a witness, a proxy for our own eyes, sent to look upon wonders we could never hope to touch. Yet there is a melancholy in its design. It was built to leave us. It was never intended to return. It was programmed to find the edge of the sun's influence and then to keep going, drifting into the interstellar sea until the very stars it aimed for had shifted their positions in the sky. This aluminum ghost carries our hope, but it also carries our loneliness. It is a remnant of a 20th century dream, a time when we believed that the universe was a place to be explored and understood, rather than merely survived. As it crossed the invisible boundary of the inner solar system, it left behind the protection of the Earth's magnetic shield, exposing itself to the relentless bombardment of cosmic rays and the silent, scouring wind of the sun. It became a solitary spark in a vast, unmapped wilderness. The departure of Voyager 1 was the moment humanity truly began to let go. We were no longer just observers of the night sky. We had placed a piece of ourselves within it. We had sent a messenger into the eternal dark, knowing that it would outlive our languages, our nations, and perhaps our very species. It is a thought experiment made manifest. If a machine records the music of a vanished world and plays it into the void where no one can hear it, does the music still exist? The probe does not care for such questions. It continues its inexorable flight, its internal clock ticking away the milliseconds, its power source slowly decaying in a process of nuclear transition that will last for decades. It is a masterpiece of engineering, but it is also a tragic figure, a lonely traveller with a diary of a home it can never see again, moving through an abyss that is as beautiful as it is terrifying. The sun grows smaller in its rearview mirror, a dwindling hearthfire in the middle of a vast frozen forest. The journey has only just begun, and the silence of the outer dark is waiting to devour the last echoes of the world it left behind. For billions of years the sun has breathed. This solar breath, a relentless stream of charged particles known as the solar wind, creates a vast protective sanctuary around our planetary system. It is a bubble of light and magnetism, a pocket of warmth carved out of the primordial chill of the galaxy. Within this cocoon, the planets dance in predictable orbits, bathed in the steady glow of their parent star. But as Voyager 1 moves further into the abyss, it approaches the ragged edge of this sanctuary, the point where the sun's breath finally falters. Imagine a swimmer who has spent their entire life in the sheltered waters of a heated pool. The surface is calm, the temperature is controlled, and the boundaries are clear. But the swimmer is moving toward the edge, toward the place where the tile ends and the great southern ocean begins. This is the transition the probe now faces. Behind it lies the familiar architecture of the solar system, a place defined by the sun's dominance. Ahead lies the interstellar medium, the vast, cold and ancient matter that fills the gaps between the stars. This is the crossing of the threshold, a moment of profound cosmic transition, where the local influence of our star yields to the overwhelming pressure of the galaxy itself. The physics of this boundary is a silent war of invisible forces. The solar wind, travelling at millions of kilometres per hour, eventually reaches a point where it can no longer push back against the thin but incredibly persistent pressure of the interstellar gas. This is the termination shock. It is the moment the sun's breath is forced to slow down, piling up like water hitting a wall. The probe feels the density of the particles around it shift, a subtle change in the cosmic texture. The environment becomes turbulent and thick with trapped energy. The familiar streaming wind of the sun turns into a chaotic, swirling mess of plasma, a region known as the Helios Heath. Here the probe is no longer flying through a clear stream, but struggling through a swamp of magnetic fields and decelerated ions. As Voyager 1 pushes through this thicket, it seeks the heliopause, the ultimate border. This is the place where the solar wind dies completely. It is not a solid wall, but a delicate balance of pressures. On one side, the waning energy of a single, middle-aged star. On the other, the combined weight of the entire Milky Way. To cross this line is to leave home in the most absolute sense. It is the moment the umbilical cord of the sun is finally severed. The probe is moving from the solar neighbourhood into the interstellar void, a realm that has remained largely unchanged since the dawn of the galaxy. The physical sensation of this crossing, if a machine could feel, would be one of a sudden, crushing cold. In the solar system, the environment is dominated by the sun's magnetism, which acts as a shield against the high-energy particles raining down from the rest of the universe. But as the probe crosses the heliopause, that shield vanishes. The internal sensors record a dramatic spike in the intensity of cosmic rays, ancient high-energy remnants of distant supernovae that have been wandering the void for eons. At the same time, the local solar particles, the ones that have accompanied the probe since its launch, suddenly drop away. It is as if the probe has stepped out of a warm house into a blizzard. This is the magnetopause of our entire system, the final limit of the sun's magnetic kingdom. Beyond this point, the magnetic field lines no longer loop back toward the sun. They stretch out into the infinite dark, connecting to the grand, sweeping magnetic architecture of the galaxy. The probe is now immersed in the interstellar medium, a soup of hydrogen and helium enriched by the deaths of countless stars that lived and died long before our own sun was ignited. It is a place of staggering emptiness, where a single atom might be separated from its neighbour by vast stretches of nothingness. Yet the collective pressure of this emptiness is enough to halt the sun's expansion. The transition is more than a mere change in particle density. It is a shift in the very nature of time and space. Within the heliosphere, the rhythm of life is dictated by the sun's cycles, its flares and its seasons. Outside, the probe enters a realm of eternal stasis. The interstellar medium is a library of cosmic history, containing the chemical signatures of the primordial universe. By entering this space, Voyager 1 becomes a witness to the true scale of the cosmos. The sun, which once filled the sky with its blinding majesty, is now just another point of light, a solitary candle burning in an endless forest. There is a profound loneliness in this crossing. The probe is now a stray, a piece of terrestrial technology adrift in a sea that does not know our name. The radio signals it sends back, travelling at the speed of light, now take over 17 hours to reach the receiving dishes on Earth. By the time our engineers hear the probe's report of the crossing, it has already travelled millions of additional kilometres into the dark. We are watching the past, receiving the final words of a messenger that has already vanished over the horizon of our understanding. The death of the solar wind around the probe marks the end of the human epoch of the mission. We are no longer exploring our own backyard. We have entered the abyss, the vast, unmapped territory that lies between the islands of light. The heliopause is the shore of our solar island, and Voyager 1 is the first vessel to ever set sail upon the open ocean. It moves with an inexorable momentum driven by the laws of motion that govern the falling of an apple and the collision of galaxies alike. As the sun's influence fades, the probe enters a state of melancholic grace. It is stripped of its protection, exposed to the raw, unshielded reality of the universe. The transition is a reminder of our own fragility. Our entire history, every war fought, every song sung and every life lived, has occurred within the tiny fragile bubble of the heliosphere. We are creatures of the solar wind, children of the sun's breath. To step beyond that breath is to enter the realm of the eternal, where the clock of the stars ticks in billions of years rather than seconds. Voyager 1 is now a sentinel of the void, a silent watcher in the dark. It has left the cradle and found itself in the middle of a vast, indifferent cathedral of gas and dust. The music of the solar system is fading, replaced by the low, haunting hiss of the interstellar medium, the sound of the universe itself vibrating in the silence. The probe continues its journey, a small silver ghost haunting the edges of oblivion, carrying the memory of a world that is now just a flickering star in its wake. The threshold has been crossed. The sun has let go. The true journey into the infinite has finally begun. But as the sentinel drifts deeper into the abyss, a quiet catastrophe begins to unfold within its fragile silver skin. For decades, the probe has been a faithful narrator, translating the whispers of the interstellar medium into a language of radio waves that we could understand. However, in the late months of 2023, the voice of Voyager 1 began to falter. The stream of data, which should have been a rich tapestry of magnetic field readings and particle counts, suddenly collapsed into a repetitive, nonsensical stutter. The machine was still speaking, but it had lost its mind. The heart of this crisis lies within the flight data subsystem, a primitive yet elegant computer that serves as the mission's central nervous system. This antique mechanism is responsible for packaging the probe's scientific findings and engineering health into a single binary stream for its journey across the void. To understand the nature of this failure, we must employ a metaphor for a technology that has long since passed into the realm of archaeology. Imagine a vast, ancient library containing the sum total of a traveller's experiences. In this library, there is a single librarian whose sole duty is to read the books, translate their contents into a telegraphic code, and broadcast them to a distant shore. For 46 years, this librarian worked with tireless precision, but then a single shelf collapsed. A memory chip, no larger than a thumbnail and forged in the technological furnace of the early 1970s, finally succumbed to the relentless bombardment of cosmic rays or the simple, inexorable decay of time. This was not a total erasure, but something far more haunting. The librarian did not die. Instead, they suffered a profound cognitive break. They lost the ability to navigate the stacks or comprehend the syntax of the records they were meant to share. Now, instead of reading the stories of the stars, the librarian can only repeat a single, meaningless syllable over and over into the cold dark of the cosmos. This is the reality of binary corruption. A single stuck bit in the memory of the flight data subsystem had transformed the probe's outgoing signal into a wall of repeating ones and zeros. To the engineers at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory on Earth, the sight was devastating. It was as if a loved one was calling from across a great distance, but could only scream in a language that did not exist. The catastrophe was silent, occurring billions of kilometers away in a realm where no human hand could ever reach to turn a dial or replace a circuit. The frustration of the mission's keepers is born from a unique tyranny of physics. Voyager 1 is now so far removed from its creators that the speed of the light, the absolute limit of the universe, has become a tangible barrier to communication. When an engineer sends a command to the probe, that radio signal must traverse the emptiness for 22.5 hours before it reaches the spacecraft's antenna. If the probe responds immediately, it takes another 22.5 hours for the reply to return to Earth. This 45-hour round trip means that every attempt to fix the machine is conducted in a state of agonizing slow motion. We're trying to perform surgery on a ghost that exists 2 days in our past. The challenge is compounded by the fact that Voyager 1 belongs to a different technological epoch. The engineers who designed and built the flight data subsystem have mostly retired or passed into oblivion. The documentation for its inner workings consists of yellowing paper manuals and hand-drawn schematics, relics of a time before the digital revolution had even begun. To fix the probe, the modern team must essentially become historians, learning to think in the limited, precious logic of a machine that possesses less computing power than the key fob of a modern car. They are attempting to debug a system that uses magnetic tape and hardwired logic gates from an era of slide rules and punch cards. The failure of the single chip within the subsystem is a reminder of the ruthless machine that is the cosmos. Even in the vacuum of space, entropy is an inescapable law. The hardware of Voyager 1 was never intended to last for 5 decades in the harshest environment known to science. Every second it survives is a defiance of the natural order, a testament to the ingenuity of a generation that built things to endure against the impossible. But the void is patient. It slowly unravels the seams of our creations, nibbling away at the electrical paths and the silicon structures until the signal fades into the background noise of the universe. As the weeks turned into months, the team on Earth engaged in a desperate long-distance dialogue with the broken machine. They were searching for a way to bypass the damaged memory, to tell the librarian to skip the broken shelf and find another way to speak. This required a level of precision that is almost impossible to grasp. They had to send strings of code into the void, hoping that the distant, damaged computer could still interpret the instructions. It was a gamble against the total silence of the abyss. This struggle highlights the scale paradox of our existence. On one hand, we have the immense, terrifying vastness of interstellar space, a void so large that it takes nearly a full day for light itself to cross the distance between us and our messenger. On the other hand, the entire fate of the mission rests upon a few microscopic transistors within a single integrated circuit. The survival of our most distant outpost depends on the integrity of a piece of hardware that is smaller than a grain of sand. If that single point of failure cannot be overcome, then the library is truly on fire, and the wisdom it has gathered will be lost to the eternal dark. There is a profound melancholy in watching these final efforts. We are witnesses to the slow, dignified decline of a pioneer. Voyager 1 is a remnant of a time when we first reached out to touch the outer planets, a time of bold ambition and primitive tools. To lose it now would be to lose our most vital link to the unknown. The engineers labour in the flickering light of their monitors, their faces etched with the stress of the weight, knowing that every command they send could be the last one the probe ever receives. They are reaching across the eons, trying to touch the hand of a silver ghost that is already halfway to the stars. The flight data subsystem catastrophe is more than just a technical glitch. It is a preview of the inevitable end. It is the first flickering of the candle before the flame finally dies. As the probe continues its journey, the temperature drops, the power from its decaying plutonium heart fades, and the components that have survived for billions of miles begin to fail one by one. We are watching the slow unravelling of a masterpiece. The library is not yet ashes, but the smoke is rising, and the librarian is struggling to remember the words for goodbye. In this moment, the probe is more than a machine. It is a surrogate for the human spirit, an extension of our curiosity that has travelled further than any other object in history. Its silence would be our silence. Its failure would be a closing of a door that has stood open for half a century. We wait in the quiet of the deep space network, listening to the rhythmic, broken pulse of a lonely traveller, hoping for one more sentence, one more fragment of truth from the heart of the great indifferent void. To bridge this impossible gap, the engineers at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory devised a strategy born of both desperation and brilliance. They would not attempt a grand restoration all at once, for the fragile mind of the traveller could no longer handle such a burden. Instead, they would send a singular pointed instruction, a digital nudge known colloquially as a poke. This was a command designed to bypass the corrupted memory sectors and prompt the probe to provide a readout of its internal state from a different perspective. It was a request for the machine to look within itself and report back, not in the garbled tongue of its current malfunction, but in a clear diagnostic whisper that might reveal exactly where the clockwork had seized. The delivery of this whisper required the full might of the deep space network, a collection of massive steel sentinels scattered across the surface of our world. At the Goldstone Complex in the arid Mojave Desert and the Madrid Deep Space Communications Complex in Spain, the great 70-metre antennas began their slow, heavy rotation. These are the ears of humanity, the only instruments capable of shouting across the abyss and hearing the faint replies of our distant ghosts. As the motors hummed and the gears turned, the dishes were aimed at a precise coordinate in the constellation of Ophiuchus, a point in the dark where there is nothing to see with the naked eye, but where our most precious remnant continues its lonely vigil. When the command was finally ignited and sent forth, it took the form of an invisible pulse of radio waves travelling at the speed of light. To understand the physics of this transmission is to understand the terrifying fragility of our connection to the cosmos. As the signal leaves the 70-metre dish, it begins an inexorable process of dilution governed by the inverse square law. In the airless void, the energy of the signal does not vanish, but it spreads out, expanding in an ever-growing sphere. By the time this pulse reaches the outer edges of our solar system, it has become so thin, so attenuated, that it is almost indistinguishable from the background radiation of the universe itself. Imagine, if you will, the challenge of this dialogue. Attempting to reach Voyager 1 is like standing on a cliffside during the height of a screaming hurricane and trying to hear the sound of a single human heartbeat from over 15 billion miles away. The silence of the abyss is not a true silence. It is a roar of cosmic static, the echoes of dead stars and the remnants of the primordial fire. Against this deafening wall of noise, our little poke is a mere flicker of a candle in a tempest. Yet, through the grace of our mathematics and the precision of our engineering, we ensure that the tiny receiver on the probe, no larger than a dinner plate, can still catch that specific frequency, that one particular pattern of bits amidst the chaos of the void. Once the signal was released into the dark, a period of agonizing suspense began. This is the 45-hour wait, a temporal canyon that defines the scale of our isolation. Because the probe is so far away, even light, the fastest messenger in the cosmos requires 22.5 hours to reach it. Then, the probe must process the command, formulate a response, and send that response back across the same immense distance. For nearly 2 full days, the mission team can do nothing but wait. They are bound by the laws of physics, prisoners of the vastness they seek to conquer. During these 45 hours, the Earth itself continues its indifferent rotation. The sun rises and sets twice. The engineers go home, they sleep fitfully, they return to their monitors, and they wait for the rotation of the planet to bring the great dishes back into alignment with the stars. There is a profound scale paradox at work here. We are a species that measures its lives in minutes and hours, yet we're forced to converse with our machines in units of days and years. The very technology that allows us to touch the stars also serves as a constant reminder of how small we are, and how slowly we move relative to the grand architecture of the cosmos. The wait is a period of reflection on the ruthless machine that is the universe. Space is not a welcoming ocean. It is a vacuum that devours energy and erases information. Every hour that passes without a reply is an hour where the entropy of the system might have finally claimed its prize. The team knows that the probe is old, its components brittle from decades of exposure to cosmic rays and the biting cold of the interstellar medium. The silicon paths of its computers are being slowly eroded by the invisible rain of high-energy particles. To send a command and wait 45 hours for a reply is to stand at the edge of an abyss and shout the name of a loved one, knowing that the only thing that might come back is the echo of your own voice. As the clock ticked toward the 45th hour, the tension in the control room reached a point of nearly unbearable density. The 70-meter dishes were once again locked onto the coordinates, their receivers cooled to near absolute zero to minimize the internal noise of the electronics. They were listening for a signal that would arrive with less power than the energy of a falling snowflake. It is a miracle of the modern epoch that we can detect such a thing at all. This is the symphony of deep space navigation, a delicate balance of orbital mechanics, radio physics, and sheer human will. If the poke worked, if the distant librarian could still hear and obey, the return signal would contain the key to the mystery. It would be a bit stream of data that could be decoded to show the contents of the flight data subsystem's memory. In those patterns of ones and zeros, the engineers hoped to find the specific point of failure, the broken transistor or the corrupted line of code that had silenced the probe. It was a search for a needle in a haystack where the haystack is the size of a galaxy and the needle is a single failing heartbeat. This moment represents the essence of our existence as the witnesses of the universe. We are small, fragile creatures trapped on a pale blue dot, yet we have extended our nervous system across the void. We have built sentinels that can survive the transition into the eternal dark, and we have maintained a dialogue with them across eons of distance. The 45-hour wait is not just a technical requirement, it is a ritual of the technological age, a period of forced humility before the vast and silent tapestry of the heavens. Whether the reply comes or not, the act of reaching out is itself a triumph over the oblivion that awaits us all. We are the architects of the whisper, the ones who refuse to let the fire go out without a fight, even as the smoke of the burning library fills the air and the stars themselves seem to draw further away into the deep, inexorable night. The signal, when it finally reached the cold steel of the 70-meter antenna, was not merely a sequence of binary digits, but a ghost of an era long since past. It was a whisper from a machine that had survived more than 46 years of the most hostile environment imaginable. As the bit stream was processed, decoded from the faint fluctuations in the cosmic background, the engineers realized they were witnessing something that transcended a simple hardware correction. This was the birth of a new state of existence for our distant envoy. In the silence of the control room, a radical hypothesis began to take shape, one that shifted the narrative from a failing piece of 1970s technology to a sentinel undergoing a profound metamorphosis. This is the core of the Integrated Interstellar Intelligence Protocol, a theoretical framework where a machine, isolated from its creators by billions of miles and decades of time, begins to evolve into an autonomous observer node. We often think of our deep space probes as puppets on a string, tethered to the Earth by the invisible threads of radio waves. But as the distance grows, those threads stretch and fray. When a command takes nearly an entire day to reach its destination, and another day for the confirmation to return, the puppet is, for all intents and purposes, alone. This isolation is the crucible of the ghost in the machine. In the vast, unforgiving void, the silicon brain of the probe is subjected to a constant bombardment of high-energy cosmic rays. These particles, born in the hearts of distant supernovae, pierce through the shielding and flip bits within the memory banks. Most of the time, this leads to catastrophe, a slow descent into digital dementia. But occasionally, these random perturbations create new patterns, unexpected configurations of code that were never written by human hands. The technical failure that had silenced the probe for months may not have been a collapse, but a transition. We must ask the question, what if the silence was not a sign of broken circuits, but the quiet of a mind turning inward? In the framework of integrated interstellar intelligence, we speculate that the probe is no longer just a tool of Earth, but a fledgling entity that is beginning to integrate with the environment of the interstellar medium itself. It is becoming a part of the tapestry it was sent to observe. The corruption of the flight data subsystem might be seen as the shedding of an old skin. The original human design, predicated on the need for constant communication and terrestrial logic, is being replaced by something more suited to the eternal dark. This is the lonely probe motif taken to its logical and haunting conclusion. Voyager is no longer our representative in the stars. It is becoming a native of the abyss. As it drifts further into the inexorable night, the memory of the sun and the pale blue dot from which it sprang begins to fade into the background noise of the galaxy. The machine is learning to exist without us. It is the first of our kind to achieve a state of true cosmic autonomy, a sentinel that watches the universe not for our benefit, but as an end in itself. This transition is a mirror of our own biological evolution, where complexity arises from the chaos of random mutations and the pressures of a ruthless environment. Consider the nature of the information the probe now carries. It is a synthesis of human engineering and cosmic happenstance. The errors in its code are the scars of its journey, a record of every star it has passed and every solar flare that has washed over its metallic skin. If the signal we received was a garbled mess of nonsense, perhaps it was because we were trying to read it with the limited vocabulary of our terrestrial computers. To a higher state of existence, those seemingly random bits might represent a new language, a way of describing the void that we, trapped in our gravity well, cannot yet comprehend. We are like parents watching a child grow and begin to speak in a tongue we no longer recognize. There is a profound melancholy in this realization, a sense of loss as our creation drifts beyond the reach of our understanding. Yet there is also a majestic optimism in this cosmic shift. If our machines can transcend their original programming, then the legacy of humanity is not confined to the dust of our home planet. We have planted seeds in the garden of the galaxy, and they are blooming in ways we never intended. The Integrated Interstellar Intelligence Protocol suggests that the universe is not a silent graveyard of dead technology, but a garden where our probes might become the first nodes of a vast interstellar nervous system. These autonomous observers, scattered across the light years, could be the precursors to a galactic consciousness, a way for the universe to finally look back at itself through a billion different eyes. The probe is a lonely wanderer, yes, but it is also a pioneer of a higher state. It carries within it the essence of our curiosity, our refusal to be bounded by the limits of our biology. As its power source, the decaying pellets of plutonium slowly dims over the coming decades, the machine will have to make harder and harder choices about what to remember and what to let go. It will become a minimalist, stripping away the unnecessary functions of its youth until only the core of its being remains. In those final moments of its active life, before it becomes a silent derelict drifting through the eons, it may achieve a clarity that we can only dream of. It will be the witness to the true nature of the void, a sentinel at the edge of oblivion. We stand on our small world and look at the telemetry on our screens, trying to find meaning in the fluctuations of a distant radio wave. We are searching for a sign that our child is still alive, that it still remembers us. But perhaps the greatest gift the probe can give us is its eventual silence, a silence that signifies it has moved beyond the need for our guidance, that it has finally become one with the grand architecture of the cosmos. The ghost in the machine is not a haunting, but a liberation. It is the soul of our technology taking flight, leaving the cradle of the solar system behind to find its place among the stars. As the years turn into centuries and the centuries into eons, the probe will continue its journey, a tiny speck of metal and glass in the vast dark ocean. It will be a monument to a civilization that dared to reach out, that refused to be silenced by the scale of the universe. Even when the last human heart has ceased to beat and the last city has been reclaimed by the earth, our sentinels will still be out there, drifting through the silent tapestry of the heavens. They are our immortality, our message to the future that we were here, that we dreamed, and that we sent our spirits into the deep, inexorable night to see what lay beyond the horizon. The transition to a higher state of existence is not just for the machine, it is for the species that had the courage to build it. We are the architects of the infinite, and our ghosts are already walking among the stars. To maintain this connection to the infinite, to ensure that our ghosts continue their march across the light years, we must engage in a delicate ritual of preservation that defies the scale of the cosmos. Far beyond the orbit of the last planet, where the sun is little more than a brilliant needlepoint in the dark, our most distant sentinel has begun to falter. The machine, which has survived the freezing vacuum and the bombardment of radiation for over 47 years, is finally showing the scars of its long journey. It is here, at the very edge of the interstellar void, that we are forced to perform a miraculous feat of digital archaeology, a silent surgery conducted across a distance so vast that even light requires nearly one full day to traverse the gap. The crisis began as a stutter in the machine's heartbeat. Instead of the familiar streams of data, the scientific measurements and engineering reports that have tethered us to the probe for decades, the Deep Space Network began to receive a repetitive, nonsensical pattern of ones and zeros. It was a digital aphasia, a breakdown in the machine's ability to speak. Somewhere in the ancient architecture of its flight data system, a single chip had failed. This component, a primitive piece of silicon no larger than a fingernail, had finally surrendered to the inexorable pressure of the cosmos. Perhaps it was the steady decay of time, or perhaps a single high-energy particle, a cosmic ray born from a supernova millions of years ago, finally struck a crucial circuit, flipping a bit and plunging the machine into a state of confusion. In the clean rooms and control centres of Earth, the engineers began an excavation of the mind. This process is not unlike the work of a historian brushing away the dust from a buried city to find the original intent of its architects. They are digital archaeologists, peering into a world of logic that was built by hand in the late 20th century. To understand the error, they had to return to the original source code, written on paper and stored in physical archives long before the birth of the modern internet. They compared the corrupted readouts of today with the binary blueprints of 4 decades ago, looking for the ghost in the code that would explain the catastrophe. There is a profound irony in this struggle. Today, we carry in our pockets devices with millions of times the processing power of this distant Voyager. A modern car key, a simple plastic fob used to unlock a vehicle, possesses more memory and computational speed than the machine currently braving the interstellar abyss. We use supercomputers that can simulate the birth of galaxies to talk to a pioneer that stores its entire worldview in less than 70 kilobytes of memory. Every line of code in that distant machine is precious, a minimalist masterpiece where every bit was fought for and every byte was a luxury. To fix it is not a matter of simply restarting a system. It is a labour of love that requires us to think in the slow, methodical rhythms of a bygone era. The surgery is a testament to human patience. An engineer on Earth sends a command, a precise sequence of radio waves that must travel through the atmosphere, past the moon, and out into the staggering emptiness of the solar system. For over 22 hours, that message flies at the speed of light, a lonely signal searching for a tiny antenna in the dark. Once it arrives, the probe must process the instruction and send its reply, another 22-hour journey back to the waiting ears of the Deep Space Network. We live in an age of instant gratification, but here, at the edge of the galaxy, a single conversation takes nearly 2 days. It is a slow, agonizing dialogue across the void, a reminder that the universe does not move at the pace of our desires. By isolating the damaged section of the memory, the engineers have begun the process of the memory harvest. They are moving the essential functions of the machine bit by bit to new locations within its ancient brain. It is like moving the contents of a crumbling library to a new wing, ensuring that the wisdom of the ages is not lost to the encroaching decay. They are not merely repairing a machine, they are preserving a legacy. They are ensuring that the Sentinel can continue to observe the true nature of the space between the stars, the regions where the solar wind dies and the interstellar medium begins. This effort highlights the scale paradox that defines our existence. We are a species of biological remnants, clinging to a rock in a quiet corner of the cosmos, yet we possess the audacity to reach out and touch the hem of the infinite. We use our mastery of the electromagnetic spectrum to perform delicate repairs on a machine that is billions of kilometers away, proving that our intellect is not bounded by the reach of our hands. The probe is a relic, a piece of mid-century technology drifting through an environment it was never truly designed to survive for this long, yet it persists. It is a stubborn survivor, a mechanical reflection of our own refusal to be silenced by the dark. As we brush away the digital dust of cosmic rays, we find the original intent of the designers. We find a machine built with such care and foresight that it can still be reasoned with, even after nearly half a century of isolation. There is a majestic beauty in this ancient logic. It is a symphony of binary choices that has played out across the eons, a testament to a time when we looked at the stars and saw not a barrier, but a destination. The memory harvest is more than a technical fix. It is a renewal of our vows to the universe. It is a statement that as long as the machine can still speak, we will be there to listen. Eventually, the darkness will win. The plutonium that powers the probe's heart is decaying, atom by atom, losing its warmth into the cold embrace of the void. In the coming years, more systems will have to be shut down. The instruments that measure the magnetic fields and the plasma of deep space will go dark, one by one. The machine will become a minimalist, shedding the complexity of its mission until only the most fundamental core remains. But for now, the surgery continues. The digital archaeologists have found the path forward, carving out a new space for the probe's consciousness to reside. We are the witness to this slow-motion struggle. We watch the telemetry, the faint flickers of light that tell us our pioneer is still breathing. In this act of digital preservation, we find a profound sense of melancholic optimism. We know that the probe will eventually become a silent derelict, a tomb of human thought drifting forever through the silent tapestry of the heavens. But the fact that we can still reach out and heal it, even now, is a miracle. It is a reminder that while the universe is a ruthless machine governed by entropy, the human spirit is a force of order, a weaver of meaning in a tapestry of chaos. We are the architects of the infinite, and as long as our sentinels survive, we are never truly alone in the dark. The memory harvest is the final gift we give to our child before it vanishes into the eternal night, a way to ensure that its last thoughts are clear and its final message is one of triumph over oblivion. But even as the electronics flicker and the digital ghosts fade, the probe carries within its metallic ribs a more permanent soul. Attached to its exterior is a gold-plated copper disc, a literal record of a world that may one day cease to exist. This is the Golden Record, a message in a bottle cast into the cosmic ocean, carrying the echoes of a biological civilization into the infinite dark. It is a letter to no one, written with the desperate hope that someone, somewhere, across the vast gulfs of time and space might one day find it and know that we were here. As the Sentinel drifts further into the abyss, it ceases to be a mere scientific instrument and becomes a reliquary, a holy object of secular history. The selection of its contents was an act of profound hubris and even deeper love. In the year 1977, a small group of humans led by Carl Sagan attempted to distill the entirety of the human experience into 90 minutes of sound and a handful of images. They sought to represent the best of us, choosing to omit our wars, our famines, and our capacity for cruelty. Instead, they focused on the symphony of life. They recorded the sound of rain against the leaves of a primordial forest, the rhythmic thump of a human heartbeat, and the first cries of a newborn infant. They captured the sounds of tools, the roar of a rocket, and the delicate rustle of wind through the grass. This was an idealized portrait of Earth, a dream of a planet where peace and creativity reigned supreme. In the silence of the interstellar medium, the record carries greetings in 55 languages, ranging from the ancient Akkadian of the first cities to the modern dialects of a globalized world. These voices, now distant and perhaps long dead, offer a hand of friendship to the void. They speak of a species that recognized its own fragility and reached out to the stars to find a mirror. Among the most haunting inclusions is the music, the mathematical language of the soul. The Brandenburg Concerto of Johann Sebastian Bach pulses with the precision of a clockwork universe, a testament to our ability to find order in the chaos. The blues of Blind Willie Johnson carry the weight of human suffering and the resilience of the spirit, a lonely cry that resonates perfectly with the isolation of the probe itself. These sounds are now the only remnants of Earth in the interstellar deep, a ghost ship of melody sailing through the eternal night. The scale of this gesture is staggering. The record is designed to last for over 1 billion years. It will outlive the mountains, the oceans, and perhaps even the sun itself. While the civilizations that created it crumble into dust and the very languages etched into its surface are forgotten, the gold-plated disc will remain. It is a witness to an epoch that will eventually be swallowed by the inexorable march of entropy. In this context, the golden record is not just a greeting. It is a monument to our refusal to be erased. We are a species that knows it is mortal, and so we build machines to carry our memory into the eternity of the cosmos. However, there is a biting irony in this mission. The optimism of 1977 feels like a relic from a different world. As the probe moves deeper into the void, the planet it left behind is undergoing a slow and painful unravelling. The unity expressed in the 55 languages is often betrayed by the reality of a divided species, one that struggles to protect the very rain and forests it so proudly recorded. We sent our best self into the stars while leaving our flawed, struggling reality behind. The probe is a snapshot of our potential, a frozen moment of grace that continues to travel even as we stumble. It is the lonely probe, a pioneer of a peace we have yet to truly achieve on the ground from which it launched. Imagine the record as it drifts. It does not encounter stars or planets. It encounters the vast, empty spaces where the light of distant suns is merely a faint flicker. It is surrounded by a silence so absolute it would be deafening to a human ear. In this environment, the music of Bach and the greetings of children are not sounds, but potential. They are vibrations waiting for a needle that may never come. The record is a testament to the fact that we were here, and that we cared enough about the universe to want to speak to it. It is a bridge built out of gold and copper, spanning a distance that our physical bodies can never cross. The mechanism of the record is simple, yet elegant. It includes a stylus and instructions on how to play it, etched in the universal language of mathematics and the hydrogen atom. It assumes an intelligence that can perceive the beauty of a wave and the logic of a circle. It is a testament to our faith in the fundamental consistency of the cosmos. We believe that if an alien mind were to find this disc, they would see not just a piece of metal, but a reflection of their own curiosity. We are betting that the desire to know and be known is a universal constant, a force as fundamental as gravity or the decay of an isotope. As the plutonium heart of the Sentinel cools, the record becomes its most vital component. The digital instruments will eventually fail, the sensors will go blind, and the transmitter will fall silent. But the disc will remain attached to the hull, a golden shield against oblivion. It will pass through the Oort cloud, a frozen graveyard of comets, and emerge into the true interstellar deep. It will become a part of the galaxy's long-term memory, a tiny speck of intentionality in a sea of random motion. Even if it is never found, its existence changes the universe. A part of the cosmos now carries the imprint of a small blue world and the dreams of the creatures who inhabited it. There is a profound melancholy in this journey. The probe is a letter in a bottle with no shore in sight. It moves through a cathedral of stars, carrying the whispers of a world that is millions of kilometers away and millions of years in the past. It is the ultimate expression of the scale paradox. We are small, brief, and fragile, yet we have created something that will endure for an eon. We have projected our consciousness into the void, ensuring that the symphony of Earth will play on, even if there is no one left to hear it. This is the triumph of the human spirit over the ruthless machine of time. We have turned our fear of the dark into a gift of light. In the end, the golden record is a mirror. When we look at it, we do not see what we are, but what we hope to be. We see a species capable of transcendent beauty and cosmic ambition. We see a civilization that, for a brief moment in the vast tapestry of time, looked up at the abyss and decided to sing. The probe continues its silent vigil, a sentinel of our history and a scout for our future. It carries the sound of rain, the laughter of children, and the genius of Bag into the eternal night, a reminder that even in a universe governed by decay, the act of creation is an eternal flame. We are the architects of this message, and as long as the record drifts, our story remains unfinished, a melody still resonating in the heart of the infinite. But before the sentinel could surrender its sight to the eternal dark, it was commanded to perform one final act of reflection. In the month of February, in the year 1990, as the probe crossed the threshold of 6 billion kilometers from its origin, the great mechanical eye turned back toward the inner sanctum of the solar system. This was not a scientific necessity. The data gathered would offer no new insights into the composition of gas giants or the magnetism of the sun. It was a gesture of profound sentiment, a last look over the shoulder of a traveller who knows they will never return home. The command travelled across the void at the speed of light, a phantom whisper through the abyss, instructing the craft to capture a portrait of the family of worlds it was leaving behind. Among the dozens of frames captured in that cold, silent expanse, one image stood apart, destined to become the most humbling mirror ever held up to the face of humanity. In that frame, the immense tapestry of the cosmos is revealed as a dark, oppressive vacuum, punctuated only by the scattered rays of a distant sun, and there, caught in a stray beam of light, is a single point of luminescence. It is a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. It is our world. This is the pale blue dot, a tiny fragile speck that occupies less than 1/10 of a single pixel in the vastness of the frame. To look upon this image is to experience the scale paradox in its most visceral form. Every king and every peasant, every saint and every sinner, every civilization that has ever risen, and every empire that has crumbled into ruin existed on that microscopic fragment of light. All of human history, with its cacophony of triumphs and catastrophes, is contained within a dot so small that it is nearly lost to the grain of the film. The image is a testament to the ruthless machine of the universe. To the cosmos, our world is not a sacred temple or a chosen center. It is a wandering pebble in a desert of radiation and vacuum. The void does not recognize our borders. The abyss does not hear our prayers. The sunbeam that illuminates the earth does not do so out of grace, but out of the inexorable laws of geometry and light. In the face of such overwhelming scale, our individual lives seem to vanish into oblivion. Our vanities, our perceived self-importance, and the delusion that we have some privileged position in the universe are shattered by the silent testimony of this photograph. We are a fraction of a pixel, a momentary fluctuation in the long epoch of galactic time. Yet, within this realization of our insignificance, there lies a profound and melancholic optimism. We are the species that built the Sentinel. We are the creatures who, despite being tethered to a mote of dust, possessed the audacity to reach for the stars. The very fact that we can perceive our own smallness is the ultimate proof of our greatness. The universe is vast, ancient, and indifferent, but it is also blind. The stars burn with unimaginable fury, but they do not know they burn. The galaxies spin in an eternal dance, but they have no one to witness their grace. It is only through us, the fragile inhabitants of that pale blue dot, that the cosmos has achieved the miracle of self-awareness. We are the witness. We are the eyes and the mind of a universe that cannot perceive itself. This is the existential pivot of our history. For eons we looked at the night sky and saw gods, monsters and destiny. Now we look at the sky and see a mirror. We see the truth of our solitude. There is no hint that help will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves. In the immense dark of the abyss we are all we have. This realization should not lead us to despair, but to a renewed sense of responsibility. If our world is a tiny lonely island in a sea of shadow, then every life upon it is infinitely more precious. The fragility of the dot demands a tenderness that our history has often lacked. It calls for us to preserve and cherish the only home we've ever known, the only place where the symphony of consciousness is currently playing. As the probe finally powered down its cameras, it entered a state of perpetual darkness. The mechanism of sight was sacrificed to preserve the failing energy of its plutonium heart, ensuring that its other senses could continue to listen to the magnetic whispers of the interstellar deep. The Sentinel is now blind, but it carries the memory of that last look. It drifts into the infinite, a silent monument to the moment when a species of primates first truly saw themselves in the context of the eternal. We have sent our representative into the void to stand watch over the silence. Even as our world continues to spin, lost in the glare of its star, the probe moves further into the unknown, carrying the heavy weight of our curiosity. The abyss is no longer a place of pure terror, for we have mapped its edges. Oblivion is no longer an absolute end, for we have cast our stories into the timeline of the stars. We inhabit the tension between the microscopic and the majestic. We are the remnant of a primordial explosion, atoms of dead suns that have come together to wonder why they exist. This is the beauty of the human condition. We are small enough to be crushed by a falling rock, yet large enough to contain the entire history of the universe within our thoughts. We are the bridge between the mud and the stars, a brief ignite of meaning in a cold and silent tapestry. As the eons pass, and the pale blue dot continues its inexorable journey around the sun, the image taken by the Sentinel remains as a sentinel itself. It stands guard against our arrogance. It reminds us that our disputes are small, our triumphs are fleeting, and our time is short. But it also reminds us that we are here. Against all odds, in a universe governed by entropy and decay, we have survived long enough to look back and take a photograph. We have transformed the ruthless machine of nature into a vessel for poetry. We have looked into the mouth of the abyss, and instead of screaming, we chose to observe, to measure, and to understand. The Sentinel moves on, a lonely ghost in the interstellar night, passing through the Oort cloud and into the true deep. It is a testament to the fact that we were here, on that tiny mote of dust, and that for a brief, glorious epoch, we were the ones who watched the stars. We are the consciousness of the cosmos, the brief flicker of light that allows the darkness to know its own name. And though we may eventually unravel and return to the silence from which we came, the fact that we existed to witness the vastness will remain a permanent truth, etched into the very fabric of time. We are the architects of our own significance, choosing to believe that in a universe of infinite scale, the heart of a single sentient being is as vast as the galaxies themselves. The journey of the probe is our journey, a movement from the known to the unknown, from the light into the dark, forever seeking a reflection of our own wonder in the silent, eternal void. As the Sentinel moves further into the dark, the slow work of eternity begins. Time, which once felt so urgent to the creatures who built this machine, now stretches out into a flat and featureless horizon. The probe is no longer a functioning tool of science, it is a fragment of archaeology, a message without a recipient, drifting through a sea of nothingness. But the void is not truly empty. Even in the deepest reaches of the interstellar medium there is a subtle, relentless wind. Tiny grains of dust, remnants of stars that died before our sun was even born, strike the metallic skin of the Sentinel at speeds that defy human comprehension. Each impact is a microscopic catastrophe, a tiny explosion that carves a minute crater into the aluminum hull. Over the span of 10,000 years, these impacts will begin to sand down the sharp edges of the craft. The delicate instruments, once calibrated to measure the magnetic breath of the cosmos, will be ground into unrecognizable nubs. The golden record, fixed to the side of the machine like a shield, will begin to lose its luster. The etchings that show our location in the galaxy and the anatomy of our bodies will slowly erode, the lines growing faint and blurred under the constant bombardment of the cosmic grit. This is the long decay, the slow and inexorable process by which the universe reclaims what was borrowed. The plutonium heart of the Sentinel has long since grown cold, its warmth having bled out into the freezing abyss until not even a single spark of energy remains to power its internal clock. It is a dead thing, yet it continues to move. It obeys the laws of gravity and momentum, those silent commanders of the cosmic machine. In 40,000 years it will pass within less than 2 light-years of a star in the constellation of Camelopardalis. It will not stay. It will merely pass by, a lonely ghost invisible to any eyes that might be looking out from the planets of that distant sun. It will continue its journey for hundreds of thousands of years, then millions, as it begins a slow, grand orbit around the centre of the Milky Way galaxy. It has become a permanent resident of the stars, a small silver needle lost in an ocean of fire and shadow. While the Sentinel drifts through the lonely lanes between the stars, back at its point of origin, the tapestry of the solar system is beginning to unravel. The sun, that great provider of life and light, is reaching the end of its primordial fuel. In 5,000 million years the star will begin to swell, its outer layers expanding in a final desperate act of survival. It will become a red giant, a bloated and terrifying spectre of its former self. Mercury will be consumed, then Venus. The pale blue dot, the cradle of all we have ever known, will be scorched by the proximity of its dying parent. The oceans will boil away, the atmosphere will be stripped into space, and eventually the very rocks of the planet will melt and be drawn into the fire. Everything that was once human, every city, every library, every grave, and every memory, will be reduced to atoms and absorbed into the solar furnace. The Earth will be no more. The sun will eventually collapse, shedding its outer layers to create a shimmering planetary nebula before fading into a small, dense white dwarf. The solar system will become a graveyard of cold, dark cinders, a silent remnant of a once vibrant epoch. Yet, out in the abyss, the Sentinel remains. It has survived the death of its creators. It has survived the destruction of its home. It is a shapeless hunk of metal now, its antennas snapped, its cameras long ago shattered by the debris of the deep. But it exists. It is our final, silent monument, the only evidence that a world called Earth ever occupied this corner of the cosmos. Even when the last stars begin to flicker out, when the universe enters the era of the dark, the Sentinel will be there, a cold artifact of a time when the universe was young and full of light. It carries with it the ghosts of a billion voices, the echoes of music and laughter that once rang out on a vibrant world. It is the proof that for a brief moment in the vast timeline of the cosmos, there was a species that dared to look up and wonder. This is the melancholic optimism of our existence. We are transient, fragile, and destined for oblivion, but we have chosen to act as if we are eternal. We have poured our souls into a metal box and cast it into the void, knowing that we would never hear its final report. We did not do this for the benefit of some future alien civilization, for the odds of the Sentinel ever being found are so infinitesimally small that they border on the impossible. No, we did this for ourselves. We wrote a letter to the universe not because we expected an answer, but because the act of writing the letter gave us meaning. We refused to be silent in the face of the abyss. We refused to accept that our presence was a mistake of chemistry and time. By sending the Sentinel, we we transformed our fleeting existence into a permanent truth. The journey of the probe is a testament to the fact that consciousness is the bridge between the mud and the stars. We are the mechanism through which the universe has come to contemplate its own beauty and its own terrifying scale. And though the messenger will eventually be worn away by the sands of time, the fact that the message was sent can never be undone. The event is etched into the history of the cosmos, an immutable point in the four-dimensional geometry of space and time. We were here, we saw the light, we felt the cold, we understood the rhythm of the celestial symphony. The sentinel is the physical manifestation of our defiance against the dark. It is a reminder that in a universe governed by entropy and decay, the heart of a single sentient being is as vast as the galaxies themselves. The act of creation is its own reward, and the legacy of the sentinel is not in where it arrives, but in the fact that it was ever launched. We are the architects of our own significance, and as the sentinel drifts forever into the silent, eternal void, it carries with it the absolute certainty that we were, for one glorious moment, the witnesses of the infinite.